So, welcome to another episode of Beta Talk. This season's sponsors are Intergas, and I really like their Cylinder, which is a cylinder but spelt with an X. And we saw it recently at the installer show. It's been built especially for heat pumps, so I really like it. Now, today, last episode, you'd know I was talking about vocational qualifications. So, my next guest is Ian Edgeworth, who's involved in teaching and training, etc., etc. Has authored two books, which we're obviously going to be chatting about. We'll chat about what we both noticed at Installer. We'll obviously continue this theme of training. Obviously, it's a big passion of mine. It's a big passion of Ian's. If you're a die-hard super fan of this podcast, you would have remembered not years ago, but ages ago, I had an expert, learning expert come on, who's probably my favourite sort of learning theorist in the world of learning psychology. He's quite controversial because there's lots and lots of research in education around learning, but he kind of knocks back against the education system because obviously most of the research around education and learning is done by the education industry. And often we might find it's the education industry where the problems lie. And if you remember, he came on my podcast and he's coined this term courses to resources. Resources are what we tend to use in our everyday lives to get things done. If people have a chainsaw that they want to repair, it's very unlikely they would go on a mechanical gardening equipment course. They'll just look it up on YouTube, how do I repair my chainsaw? So resources are everywhere in our lives. And Ian, my next guest, Ian Edgeworth, has created two for people in the heat pump industry, and the heating industry as a whole. So welcome to the show, Ian. It's great to have you on. We obviously, you and your wife were at this installer show, because it's worth mentioning Carolyn. She's been a big part of this journey of yours to get these two books out, I suppose, hasn't she?
Yeah, Carolyn and I set up New Perspective Learning Solutions last October. And really, initially, it was a platform to be able to produce the books and get the books out there. But it's quickly becoming something a bit bigger than that. I think the clue's in the name. You and I are big advocates of trying to refresh the learning experience, the qualification framework that's out there. From an assessment point of view, I'm more a trainer. I generally feel that assessments are a means to an end. Training's where the palpable learning is. So the two books that we produced were really the inspiration behind them was to try and assist the learner on their journey. We're very good, as you know, at lecturing in the UK. I think that deviates from actual support, mentorship, etc. So the books are really there to offer an arm round people's shoulders and produce an introductory guide to heat pumps. And then the second book that we've just released that you had a big part to play in, the Pocket Guide to Low Temperature Central Heating, is a more universal guide purely based about trying to turn the thermostat down and using systems in a more sustainable manner.
So you just tell the audience what your first book is called.
Yep, so the first book came out just before the turn of the year. It's called Welcome to the Wonderful World of Air Source Heat Pumps, What Kept You?
I thought that's what kept you. So I obviously saw the book before most people, and I suppose it's worth the listener understanding what I really like about your book, Ian, is because there's not many books. You had John write his book around 2006, maybe, I can't remember now.
Yeah.
Obviously, John Sumner goes back to sort of 1976. But what I liked about your book is because people, when they're going on, let's say, heat pump training courses, or they're going on into training centres, they'll see PowerPoints. But you had some really, really good images in your book, like cutaway images of compressors. I mean, you even had a cutaway image of an accumulator, I think, which is all to do with sort of oil return management and stuff like this. And you had images of sort of four-way valves and electronic expansion valves. And I immediately thought, when I saw them images, I thought, oh, this is really nice for people that want to get into servicing and maintenance of heat pumps. I think your book really dives into how heat pumps actually work, what's inside them. And that's something I hadn't really seen too much of. So is that something you thought about doing when you sort of? Because I think Ideal have helped you with. I mean, probably a big shout out to Ideal if they were the ones that helped you. I can't remember now, but
The original book was probably more a solo project. Ideal at the time had um, assisted me on what we call Project Retrofit, aka taking one for the team, which was an installation of a heat pump at our house. Our property, everything on paper, Nathan, a heat pump shouldn't work as a retrofit project. If you believe certain tabloids and certain people with certain motivations, shall we say. So we wanted to buck that trend. So Andrew Johnson at Ideal, who's been a friend for a long time, supported us with that, and we put that in as a section of the book. So it was a real world story of success and failure in some bits. Failure being me being an installer that had forgot how to hold a pair of pliers, but it's no, it turned into a really successful project. But the my main inspiration behind it was some of the other heat pump manuals that were out there. I know that John Cantor stuff and those types of books are fantastic, but the on-site guides that were available at the time, one was just released early last year, and I won't forget, a lot of people who I've got a hell of a lot of respect for in the industry said, Ian, this is finally nailed it. This is a book that the industry's been crying out for. And me, like a kid on Christmas Day, when I got a copy, ran home and shut all the doors, locked all the windows, and let me just read this book. And it really was typical of what we've got out there. It was chapter one, regulation, chapter two, legislation, chapter three, the rules. And I was like, where's the heat pump?
yeah.
So, listen, I take a lot of pride in the fact that it was a motivation from those books to think that we surely can do a bit better than this. So the Wellcome book, The Clues in the Name, it's an introductory guide. It's for those who are perhaps looking to go into the heat pump journey. Those guys that are already involved in it, we give different perspectives, i.e., the clues in the company name. And it was wrote in a very conversational style. It was really the way that I've developed my training style is trying to engage as opposed to lecture. So it was really a, a supportive kind of dialect throughout the book. And then obviously with the video content, which was quite unique at the time, one of the reasons why I called it an Ian Edgeworth concept was if you're struggling to grasp, for instance, flow rates, mass flow rate triangles, pipe size, and then there's QR codes where you can scan it and it will literally take you into my kitchen. And I'll try and bring a different medium to that to try and get that learning across.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when you were chatting to me about that. That's what you were going to do with your book, and I thought, well, that's nice and refreshing. Now, obviously, we had another book come out quite soon after yours, and obviously, I know the authors of that, and you do as well. And I remember they contacted me because they wanted me to do the oh, crikey, what's in the front of a book? I can't think what it's called now.
Oh, the forward.
The forward, and then they I think what they found was they wanted better images than what they would, and so they teamed up with Heat Geek, and Lewis was also going to be moving to Heat Geek anyways, and because they've got some lovely images. The Heat Geek images are, I think, really good because they people get a bit scared about this sort of topic. So when you see nice sort of cartoony images, it pacifies you a little bit. You think, oh, well, let's carry on reading about the design. Now, I think when the two books come out, I was a little bit, if I'm honest, concerned. I thought, oh, poor Ian, he's put so much work because I saw how much work you were putting into this book, and I thought, oh, there's another book coming out. And then when I've got both of them, obviously, and I thought, no, actually, these two books really work well and complement each other. If someone wants to get into this industry, they both have very individualistic things that will help someone. So the other one's is very, very much about just design. Yours has got design in it, as we know. And like I say, it's got these really good visual pictures of like, because most people are never going to see what the inside of, I mean, of a compressor looks like. There's some great heat pumps, demonstration heat pumps at the show, for instance. I mean, I know Triangle had one where you can kind of see inside it. But even with that, you couldn't really see some of the detail of, what does a compressor look like if it's completely cut in half? And you've got some excellent photographs in yours that really go into that. And obviously, if people want to sort of, they got into the design and they've got into installation and now they want to maybe get into like, I don't know, let's do say do an F gas and doing all that sort of thing. They've got real a real good introduction into what is actually inside one of these vapor compression machines.
Yeah, the our sector, if you want to look at the heat pump sector, if we're concentrating on that book first, is still relatively niche. For too long, I think we had a preachy type of approach to it, where it was very, if you don't know what heat pump is, then you're not in the club. If you can't wax as lyrical as Kimbo does, and some of these other experts, then you're not welcome. Hence the reason why the book was called Welcome. It would have been very easy to sit and write a book that was the higher echelon of the mechanics and the physics behind it and the chemistry behind it. But we're going to turn too many people off. So the idea was this would be part one of a two-part series. I've promised Carolyn part two. We'll wait until next year. I'm just about managing to hold on to my marriage. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to scare people away. Right? We don't want to use too clever a terminology, too stuffy a terminology that is just almost, to these people who are looking to access this industry, is almost like, whoa, this is above my station. It's not. You're a heating engineer. You've got so many transferable skills, but what you need is you need mentorship, you need support, we need a collective approach, we need an inclusivity. James and Lewis and I spoke a few times, obviously on the release of their book. It's not one book that's going to solve the problems that we've got. It's not one PowerPoint. It's not one YouTube channel. It's not one podcast. We mentioned too much about the silver bullet. I've been using the term for a while that what we need is silver shrapnel. We need different solutions for different problems. Whether it's the Wellcome book or the pocket guide that we've just released, these are part of the solution. They are not the complete solution. My aspect and my perception of certain learning styles, etc., has been successful, but it might not be for everyone. So we're constantly learning and constantly trying to develop to try and break down these barriers.
Well, a book, as well as being a resource, a useful resource, it sort of pertains to sort of the, there's two main tenets of Beta Teach, which when I started Beta Teach up, and that's the first one is activate people as autonomous learners, self-directed learners. And of course, a book can do that. Like you say, they can open that book. It might not even be their own book. They might see someone else with it, and they have a little flick through and think, "Oh, that looks really, really interesting. I want to learn a little bit more about that," because that is a massive problem in our industry. And I've been talking to sort of quite high level people, as you probably know, about the training that's going on. We've got the heat training grant. I think 9,000 people have been trained at the expense of us, the taxpayer, over £5 million now. And one of the things that's going on in these training centres is, and it's a bit of an analogy I use. You'll get a load of people go into the training centres. Let's say there's 20 people in there, or a class of 30. And before you even switch that PowerPoint machine on, if you were to say to them, right, everyone, write down the four main components of a heat pump, what will tend to happen is you'll probably get 3, 4 people be able to do that. Everyone else is going to look really, really blank faced. And then you'll usually get one person that's pretty cocky, put your hand up and say, why would we know that? We're here to learn that from you. That's the problem. We live in this world of resource. If people are going on a course to learn something, it's not hard. And we've got to try and get adults to understand it. So we've got to try and get them to realise learning, the ownership of learning is on them. It's not on people like me and you to get knowledge magically in their head. It's on them. And you'd think that a lot of adults will think, right, I'm going on a course about heat pumps. What is a heat pump? And all they've got to do is read something, look at it on YouTube, oh, right, okay, it compresses it, it's moving energy from Bob's your uncle. So they start to learn, they start to activate their own neurology. But you've got so many adults will go on courses nowadays, especially the water regs, because I talked that for a long time. And you've got people going on that will end up walking out of that not knowing zilch about water regs. If I said to them, what's the 5 fluid categories of water, they'll look at me as if I'm speaking Klingon. If I said to them, what are the backflow devices that you use for some of them fluid categories, they just wouldn't have a clue. Which comes to the point I was making in my episode before this, is that it's very easy to prove this qualification system does not work because they are supposed to have mastered every learning outcome before they get that certificate. So effectively, they're all getting certificates year in, year out. Same with gas. Not all with gas. Some gas training centres are brilliant. If I'm honest, they are really good. But we've got this massive problem with training, and obviously, like with resources like yourself, it's this thing of activating people and thinking, oh, I want to know a bit more about this, and they can chat to someone, they can ring you up even, or they can go on social media and ask questions. But you've activated that curiosity, and that's so. It sounds so simple, but it's so important because if we just think, oh, let's write a new standard. I mean, if I had £1 million, well, if I had a pound for every time I've heard, oh, we need to improve the standards. None of the good engineers I know are good because the standards were improved or someone wrote some better standards. They're good because they wanted to learn about something and they took ownership of their own learning. It's nothing magical about standards, and yet every report you read is, oh, we've got to make the standards better. I mean, it's going on now with the apprenticeship standards. How long did the book take you to write? How did you do it? You did it on a computer, I suppose. Was it hard? Is it easy to do?
Yeah, it was hard. um, I, I I can still remember sitting at the kitchen table and opening up the laptop and writing the title and by Ian Edgeworth, and then staring at that computer for about 3 days and just going, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Um, then I decided to actually have a conversation with myself and try and train the computer, and just spew the spew is probably not the nicest term, but literally just divulge the kind of training style that I developed over a number of years, and and just have a conversation with the computer. It was once it started, it became quite a fluid and almost addictive process. If I'm being honest with you, it was when it was complete, it was mind blowing to realize that I was at the end and it was done. Did very few rereads. I literally sent it to yourself and another few people. I've spoke to Graham Hendra, who's obviously wrote a few books, and he said, "How many times did you reread it?" I went, "Once on the computer," because I knew that as soon as I start reading it, it'd be tweak this, tweak that, and it then becomes, well, the never-ending story because you never get to the end of it. The pocket guide that we've just released was a mad concept where it went from not a book but literally being a flip chart to aid training centres. Some simple equations, just something handy that we can um, put in training facilities. Then it was about getting sponsorship involved and trying to get to a stage where we could give them away for free of charge. Then when I started penning out the equations, I thought it'd be really good if there was an example to go with this equation. And then when I did the example, it was it'd be really good if I could just explain the kind of philosophy behind this equation. Next thing I knew, I was up to my armpits and writing another book. But um, I, I was quite fortunate, not only in the sponsors being Ideal, Primary Pro, Intertech, and Ultimate Renewable Supplies, but I then started to reach out to some friends, yourself included, and went, listen, it would be great if this was a collective, if it was a collaboration. Um, Probably most of you saw through me and thought, well, you're just wanting us to help write a few sections, so it's less work for you. But literally, we had it from the minute I had the sponsorship, which was in March, to having it ready and printed for installer. So a few months, a lot of late nights, a lot of head scratching. But no, I'm really proud of the pocket guide. I'm really proud that we're able to give away 3,000 of them free of charge. The aim is to get them into training facilities, get them into colleges for probably year-end apprentices. It's probably a bit more advanced for someone starting out on their journey. For those looking to transition into low-temperature heating design, into renewable heating systems, because I'm madly passionate as you are that right now I think the training sector is suffering from reputational damage. I think it would be irresponsible just to throw a blanket over every training centre and say that they're all at this level. Just as the attendees on my heat pump training used to be, as you mentioned, you've got real peaks and troughs. My first session on our courses would be a couple of hours just really getting to know people and talking about the journey that we're on and really trying to gauge experiences as well. That we are failing in certain areas. I think the assessment process is archaic. I don't think it's fit for purpose in many instances. Colleges are suffering from a curriculum which is outdated and needs revamped. But we're, we're living in such a fast paced environment that it's almost too easy to stick with the status quo and say, right, okay, 30 multiple choice questions is the easy way to go to evaluate understanding and underpinning knowledge. I think there's a huge difference between qualification and competency. Qualification means that at the end of a 4 or 5 day course, whatever it is, you've got a nice shiny certificate that says that Nathan and Ian are fully competent in this field. Competency only comes through experience. That takes time. So somebody asked me recently what we actually need to accelerate our sector and bring about the army that we need. And my response was, slow down. We're actually trying to go too quick. We've got too many facilities that are seeing the monetary bonus and reward of being able to offer these courses and the opportunities through funding that are available south of the border, unfortunately not north of the border. And it starts to become a conveyor belt. And not just from training providers, but also installers as well. I remember years ago when Boris Johnson made a unique statement, which isn't unlike him, about the amount of renewable technology we've been installing. Nathan, my phone went bonkers. Ian, do you do heat pump qualifications? Yeah. When's the next one? 2 weeks. Is there space? Yeah. Can I book on? Yes. I'll take a deposit. Great. That's you all booked on. See you in 2 weeks. Right. Great. Ian, see while I've got you. What is a heat pump? Right. Hold on. You've just booked to come on a course to do heat pumps and you don't know what one is. No, but I've heard there's a fortune to be made. This is, listen, we're not all working voluntarily. I'm probably the silly one that writes books and gives them away free, but we need to be really careful about the reputation of this technology. We're still at a precipice when we only installed best part of 50, 60,000 last year. Compare that to the boiler market, it's still completely niche. But the bad stories that you see out there, the consumer journey that isn't what it should be and what should be expected, stems from way back from that. Right? We've got a tiering system where you look at right at the top if you want to go to off qual and then start to put that down to awarding bodies that perhaps don't understand the intricacies of the experience, the learning input times that are required to transition from traditional fuel to renewable technology. Then the centres themselves, and listen, some of them are fantastic. I built one along with Carolyn, and we built a house inside it to give as realistic a working experience as we could. But we really need to support these facilities. Right now, if you're a gas centre, and you said yourself, most gas centres are great, which is brilliant. But right now, if a gas centre looks at the renewables side of it and goes to the rewarding body and says, listen, I want to be able to do air source heat pumps, the process is apply for scope. You'll get a centre provision list, which means that you need a working heat pump that they can do the final connections on. You do that. You then send your staff to go and get the heat pump qualification themselves at another centre where they might sit in on a class as the same as a candidate. They then get the scope extension and they're handed training material, which, in my opinion, is woefully inadequate. And then an assessment process that is wild, to say the least. We're not sending out people that have got competencies. We're sending people out with certificates. And that's not what the industry needs right now.
You picked up on something there. Yeah, it's so easy for a gas centre that's doing everyone that's doing gas has to go on there 5 years and get that again. So if a gas centre thinks, oh, there's some funding involved in this heat pump training, I'll just send one of my gas assessors onto that heat pump course, 3 4 days. That assessor comes back. They can now, and like you say, the centre's already applied for scope. It can now teach that course. So you're basically assessing competence of all these people going on to that course. You're assessing competence with an assessor who's never worked with heat pumps in their life, ever, ever. In fact, the closest they come to a heat pump was just from the BPEC power points, because unfortunately some centres do have a heat pump. They've got to have a heat pump in there, and there is some some of the assessment it does involve where you've got to do a couple of things with that heat pump. So you've got your knowledge assessment, then you've got your sort of practical kind of assessment, is it, or performance assessment. But I've been told that some centres are just literally switching that on and saying, "Doesn't it sound quiet?" Switching it off, and that's it. Done. Job done. And because these centres realise they're getting £500 for everyone walking through that centre, they're getting £500 straight free from us, the taxpayer. So it has turned into a very lucrative industry. So but which is unfortunate, because there are centres that want to do a really really good job. Everywhere you've taught, and Karen is part of that process as well. You want to do a good job. And when I was teaching in a college, and colleges are bloody hard to teaching to, because none of your management is worried about the plumbing industry. None of your senior management is definitely not worried about it. I mean, there's hundreds of courses being taught in college. They're not worried about my industry. Of course, I am. But you have to play by their rules. I'm not very good at playing by their rules if they're not that caring. So,
No, you can buck the trend. It's became too easy to follow the journey that I just spoke about, where your awarding body will give you a PowerPoint, and what these facilities, and I'm not labeling them all, they're not training, they're presenting. They're presenting material that has been created by people that don't have the understanding, the intricacies of the technology, the they don't understand the philosophy of training, the psychology behind learning, and and it devalues what it is that we're actually trying to do. We've also got to the stage where it's became a monopoly, um, and almost a cartel, where uh, we deliver the air source heat pumps at my last centre and qualifications in the level 3, and we trained and assessed over 5 days, which is probably a day longer than the average in the kind of locality. Do I think it's long enough? No. Would I like to train these people for 4 weeks, 5 weeks? Yeah. Who's going to pay for it? Because the problem is you've got these engineers who then need to invest not only the monetary cost of the course, but if they're self-employed, as you know, they're taking time off. If they're employed, their employers losing them for longer. So what we start to do is we start to trim and trim and trim, and it's been allowed to happen to the stage where I know an engineer that went on a 1 day low temperature heating and hot water design course. 1 day. I can't train that in a week, not properly, to try and give you that confidence and that underpinning knowledge. It's you and I have spoke about it in the past. We talk about this train the trainer as well, to try and try and support these centres and these individuals. I was talking to someone about this just at Installer. We're missing a nugget, Nathan, and it's train the trainer to actually train, not to be adept and and fully conversed in the digital presentation, because ultimately, whether it's plumbers or gas engineers, we can still read. If it's just reading off a screen, I can do that. Just leave me the clicker and I'll jog on myself. It's trying to enhance and make that journey more immersive. So it's ultimately we're giving people that underpinning knowledge, that confidence, but the learning doesn't stop there. If you're completely new to heat pumps and you've done a 4 5 6 day course, that's just the start of the journey. You're literally clinging on to the first rung of the ladder. You haven't even got your first foot on it yet. That's the start of the journey. But we're too quick with training facilities just to wave people away at the door and say, that's you, see you in 5 years. We need to do better than that. We really do.
The sad thing for me is there's some really good people in the Heat Pump Association. and I was introducing Lawfully. I worked with Lawfully at the Install Show to do this AI platform, and I was introducing them to some of the people in the Heat Pump Association. Really nice people. But it's sad that they have, and Desnes haven't looked at this training industry, really, really looked at it and thought, right, we've got a problem. We have got a problem. What can we do? Because they're not. I'm lucky that I've got quite a powerful voice. I can chat to people behind the scenes, etc., and say, look, we've got a bit of a problem. And you know, I know for a fact nothing's being done. In fact, the line is being maintained that we're successful. We're training lots and lots of gas engineers in heat pump technology. Not well, we're not though, are we? We're just putting them into a training centre, giving them a certificate. The certificate companies, the awarding bodies, awarding organisations is what Ofcor calls them. They make money. I mean, I know one of them is a charity, so okay, but they make money, and the training centres are making lots of money in a lot of cases. Like I say, there are good training centres out there as well. So I don't. You had a good term. Don't put them all under the same blanket. But it's a broken paradigm, and if we really, really, you've got engineers out there working really, really hard. You've got people like yourself working really, really hard. I mean, two books don't just write themselves. And you wrote this before AI come on the scene, literally. I think you wrote your book literally the week after ChatGPT came out or something silly like that. Um, and working really, really hard. And yet sometimes it feels like, well, why are we working this hard when we're not getting backed up by the people that need to be backing us up, which is the energy department and bodies like the Heat Pump Association. What did you see at Installer Show that sort of inspired you? Was there anything around training that inspired you at the Installer Show or any of the speeches that you went to? We had Mario. Mario turned up, didn't he? Bless him.
Yeah, yeah. I spent a bit of time with Mario Dodic on Monday of last week. I sent you a couple of pictures. It was the first time I tried haggis, which was, yeah.
Oh, you took him out with Agus, didn't
Yeah, yeah. We did a wee podcast and then went out for a couple of drinks and something to eat. But there was loads to be enthused by at Installer. There was a lot of talk about education, which is the thing that interests you and I. I mean, it's great seeing stalls with shiny new products and people with white teeth and promoting their products, which is brilliant. And we didn't actually leave Hall 5, I don't think, which was where all the heat pumps were. Just wasn't enough time. But what I'm really interested in right now is a different approach to training. For too many years, I've probably been too precious about classroom training, where everything has to be done face to face. On paper, right now, the training industry looks great. We're turning out qualified people. The funding's getting spent, etc. But what we need to start doing is spending money better. I feel a hybrid approach to training could be the way forward, where if the market dictates that we need to do a heat pump course in 3/4 days, I like the approach of people like Joe Alsop at Warmer Academy. Obviously took on Kimbo's training, which is, some of that training can certainly be done outside the classroom as prerequisite training. Right now, what we've got engineers whose prerequisites for air source heat pump qualifications is your hot water safety systems, your G3, your water regulations, and it used to be energy efficiency now, but it's just those two. But again, we're proving that underpinning knowledge by getting these candidates to bring that certificate. I think there could be professional discussions out there, prerequisite learning that you need to get involved in. And it's very easy to prove concept on that. One of the things that I loved about what Ideal Heating were doing with their Expert Academy was the online learning sessions that Jonathan Ward did, which was that basic fundamentals. This is what a heat pump is. Well, you don't really need to be in a classroom to learn what a vapor compression cycle is. You can do that at home. And the way I equate that to my experiences in training was this peaks and troughs of experience in your class. So I could easily have experienced heat pump installers in my class. They've just never done the qualifications so as they can go into the MCS framework. But then I've got people that have been sent by their employer that don't even know what heat pump was and was only told about the course on the Sunday night. I can't leave them behind. So we need to start at ground zero. This is the 4 stages of the cycle. These are the key components. Let's get a bit hands on. And I need to try and make that engaging enough for the people that experienced not to lose them. And if we had dipped in hybrid online learning that everyone could go on, and I'm really keen as well that for the people that are experienced about it, what are they actually going to get from that? Not a lot. So what we could do is we could have a form of evaluation at the start of it that if you nail that evaluation, then you can skip that module. I've got the world's worst analogies, but I used to term it a bus journey where it will get to a stage where you go, "Oh, this is my stop. I need to get on here because I'm now being pushed and I'm having to be stretched." That way, if everyone was to undertake that when they arrive on this classroom talk, we can kick it off a level higher, and we can get more involved with them in that time that we've got them because they've already done the learning that we've developed online. And as long as we're very, very careful that it's not stuff that needs to be, we're not pitching at a high level where somebody's apprehensive about coming on the course, etc. It's still supportive. It still follows the psychology of learning, but just delivered in a different medium.
I mean, you've hit upon something very important. I mean, there's a lot of research around this. It it it's very useful if we know where people's learning is already at, and then we know where we can take them, and how quickly we can take them on that journey sometimes. And of course, going back to the training that is currently going on, a lot of the training is no one knows where the learning is at. You get these people come into these centres, they sit down, watch PowerPoints for 3 days. You assess them with multiple choices. You've got no idea where their learning was at originally. And like what you just said there, you sometimes have people that have come to your training that got told by their boss on the Sunday night you've got to go on this heat pump training, whereas you've had people that have contacted you prior to going on, and had kind of like what we call a professional discussion, and you can ascertain from that professional discussion, cool, they know quite a lot about all this vapor compression stuff already, and you kind of know where they're learning, where they've started on their learning journey, and it can often be very important. And of course, once you start pushing people into a classroom setting that are all on different starting points, that then becomes hard on us tutors. I mean, I remember this specifically when I first started teaching. When I first started teaching, I had it kind of easy. For the first time in history of UK prisons, people have been taught stuff in prisons, but the private sector came in. So this big private company, obviously making millions and millions and millions of training in prisons. I think two ex-prime ministers were shareholders. They had a 3-year probationary period, so they didn't want to muck that up. So basically, us trainers were autonomous. We could deliver the training how we wanted. So I had these 12 students, eight out of the first cohort I'd ever taught were in for murder. So that's one of the reasons why I got to know science really, really well. I didn't want to let them down because I realised they'd want to get into the nuts and bolts of it. But as soon as that 3-year probationary period was up within this massive company, it was Europe wide as well, that taught, well, and Australia, it taught in prisons all over Europe. Uh, it then became a conveyor belt. So I would have prisoners that I'd been teaching, and like I'd been teaching for 4 months through the proper MVQ, not MVQ, the technical certificate level 2 and 3, and then a prisoner might get relocated for whatever reason, they had to move or whatever. So I've got a space. So the prison would put someone now into that course that's never been involved in plumbing and heating. And as you know, the first module you teach is health and safety. So I've now got to try and teach him health and safety while I'm trying to teach all the others quite advanced heating stuff. And then you get someone else coming on because someone else left. And it just made you realise education can be just a conveyor belt, and all they're really worried about is the qualification. Them prisoners, I was told, them prisoners were worth something like £230 a day to be in that classroom. And 600 people in the prison I was working in were in an educational situation every day. And that's just one prison. You times that by the 40 prisons this company was working in. We're talking millions. Because that's what them certificates are worth. That whole certification industry, unfortunately, is a business in its own right across the board, whether it's primary, secondary, university, prisons. It is a real big business. And the trouble is, because it's a big business, for really, really important industries like our own, trying to break that paradigm is going to be quite tough. It really is going to be quite tough. And that's why people like yourself, you took it on your own under your own vision to think, well, I'll try and help as much as I can. I'm training people, but I'm going to write a couple of books as well that provide resources and activate this sort of spark and help people sort of think, oh, I might like to get into this sort of particular vocation.
Yeah, but there's another side to the coin as well, and again, you and I spoke about this probably last year, where there will be people in the educational sector that realise that what they're doing isn't quite as good as it could be, shall we say? So, and where does their support come from? So right now it's very difficult. Well, it was very difficult for me to get involved in the training industry. I was really fortunate enough that I got a chance to work in one of the best facilities in the UK. It was probably between 6, 7, 8 months before I was actually allowed to stand in front of candidates and assess them, not train them. That was still to come, where it was very much a long mentoring period under one of the best teachers in the UK, who's sadly passed away now.
Is that Michael?
No, it was George Loudon. He ran a company, gas certification company in Blantyre. He was revered across the UK, but not everyone has got that time and that fortune. What we've got just now is, and again, I'm not pigeonholing and not suggesting this is across the board, but a training centre needs new staff. So they put an advert, gas engineer applies. I've had people apply for jobs with me, and the only two questions I would ask when we have a chat is A, why did you apply? And B, how much money do you want? Um, the answers to the first question could, some people say, oh, I fancy a bit of an easier life. And you just, that's not going to happen. I see this and it looks pretty straightforward, and they don't understand the intricacies of it. But too many of these people have said, right, okay, we're going to take a chance on you. On Monday, you've got 6 guys doing their gas renewal, or they're doing the water regs. There's your PowerPoint, jog on. Let me know how you got on. That's not good enough. But the train the trainer aspect that's out there by awarding bodies just now. I did a train the trainer session a couple of years ago, and it was how to fill out the application forms. And I went, I've not got time for this. I thought this was about how you want these courses delivered, etc. We bucked the trend in the fact that I've never used a certification body's training material. I would spend years creating training material because it's fine putting a package together, but you need to pilot that. You need to see what works. You need to refine it. You need to see where the jokes are, where the learning is, where the engagement is, and some facilities out there would really love, I'm sure, to spend that amount of time with their staff and get them to mentor. And this is where we had spoke about creating a network where we're happy to support. If you've got someone that's struggling, we can help you with that, because we need a big push toward a greater good just now. We're too good in the UK to accept mediocrity, and it seems to be the trend. And it goes back to what I said earlier. On paper, everything works. We've got people jumping on these courses, these funded courses. What is their motivation for going on them? Would they go on it if it was monetized? Would they go on these courses if they were 6, 7, 8, 9, a grand? I don't know. But on paper, it looks as though we're doing good. But when you actually look closely, we could do a lot better.
Mm. How about you? What sort of things do you miss sort of this face to face teaching? I imagine you do because you're passionate and good at it. Do you miss it at the moment?
Um, yes, is my first answer. I had 12 years in frontline education where I I had uh, I had something inside me that wanted to get involved with training, but I never no idea if it was something that I could be successful in. To say, George saw something in me when we had a chat and took a chance on me, and I went from getting nervous, handed out application forms with Carolyn, who wasn't my wife at the time, but she was actually mentoring me as well. And went from there to go through the assessor qualification, verifiers qualification. I was then fortunate enough that George put me through a teaching qualification, which was brilliant for me, and it really lit a spark in me. I then moved up to centre manager, technical director, and then we went through to Edinburgh and kind of put in place the foundations at the academy where Carolyn still runs that centre. So I've had 12 years of running about with my hair on fire. I've fortunate enough that I'm now with Corgi Technical as their head of training, which is a brilliant role. I'm learning a lot on the digital side, which is adding another bit to my repertoire, if you like, and how we can actually make this hybrid training work. But I miss the rough and tumble of trying out courses, seeing what material works, what doesn't. I miss the light bulb moment. Do you know, I was actually thinking about this the other day, and it sounds a bit ironic and a bit counterproductive. I miss when people told me they didn't get it. I used to get a buzz, and it sounds terrible because well, how bad was your training if I didn't get it, Ian? But having people relaxed enough with you and feeling a camaraderie where they could say, Ian, that just went over my head. That means that we're going on a journey as one. So I would much rather you told me that than go to this endpoint assessment and just be anxious about it. And it's then about having those different strings to your bow. If you've only got one delivery style and someone says that they don't get it and you repeat it, they're not going to get it again. So we need to use a different medium. We need to use a different approach. We've been too universal in the fact that awarding bodies think that everyone will learn from a PowerPoint and hope that the trainers will do a bit hands-on and stuff like that. You and I both know everyone learns in different ways. Some people, it's mathematics that they thrive on. Some, it's hands-on approach. Some people can comprehend terminology, etc., very quickly, but don't like the hands-on side. It's trying to cater to something, and that's where road testing, training, and then having the confidence to say, you know what, that bit actually didn't work. It sounded great in my head when I was sitting at my kitchen table and penning it out, but it wasn't successful. And having the confidence to actually assess your own performance and then change it. So yeah, I've got a few projects on the go just now. You know us, mate. It's never ending. There's a number of books that are coming out just now, which is great. Really good. I've been asked to collab on a couple, but really right now my motivation is going back to the coalface and trying to support people with what they're actually doing with training delivery, as opposed to well, put it this way, I've been ordered that I'm not writing any more books this year. So next year we've got the second part of the volume of the Wellcome book. So the first one was called Welcome 2. The second one will be called Welcome Back to the Wonderful World of Air Source Heat Pumps. You look great.
Oh, that's nice. I like that. But you can't start. You can't start that this year. That's starting next year, isn't
it? Early next year. But the concepts starting to rattle around. So it's the donkey works in place.
And obviously, Carolyn, she works in a training centre, doesn't she? She works in the.
So we went through to build a huge facility just south of Edinburgh. Carolyn came through as the ops manager, and I was the technical director. Then when I decided to move on, she took on the mantle of centre manager, which that's bread and butter to Carolyn. She's been running centres and telling me what to do for enough years. So she's really excelling in her new role and loving the challenge. And it's exciting times.
So before we go, tell everyone where they can find your book, Welcome to the Wonderful World of Heat Pumps. It's on your website, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, they're self-published, so they're on our website, www.newperspectivels.com.
And I'll put that link in the show notes. And then also the little pocket guide you did. I mean, that's managing to go out free to a lot of well, you mentioned like colleges and things like this. You
Yeah.
had a load free at the installer show, didn't you? And can people get that from your website as well, or where do they go for that?
Yeah, so the pocket guide's on the website as well. So if you're an engineer looking to find out more, go to the website, follow me on LinkedIn. The website's on my homepage. We've got 3,000 of them to give away free. Well, 500 of those were distributed down at installer, so we've got 2,500 left over. Not left over. That sounds still to put out there. If you are a training provider or a college looking to get your hands on a copy, if you email us at info at newperspectivels.com, tell us a bit about what your facility does and how the pocket guides can help your students. And we'll get back in touch with you and hopefully be able to supply you with some of those free copies.
Spot on, Ian. Thank you ever so much for coming on the show, buddy.
Thanks. Pleasure, mate.